Today we're going to talk about getting back to the basics with 4-H club management. And as we're going through, if you have any questions about anything that I'm talking about or on one of the slides, please put a message in the chat box and ask your questions that you have. So let's go on. So we're going to talk, as I said, a little bit about what 4-H is, how a club is structured, what is in a standard 4-H club meeting, planning for a great 4-H year, and that's something we're probably all looking at right now with the new 4-H year kicking off, and recruitment of new members, adult volunteers, and we're going to talk on the cash management side with fundraisers and managing any funds that you bring in, and then preparing for face-to-face or virtual meetings as we are adhering to social distance guidelines. So first of all, if you're new to 4-H, you may not even understand what 4-H is. So just to give you a quick little overview of what 4-H is, it is like a club, and it's for kids. And we have Clover kids, which are going to be your kids that are under age 9. So we say 4-H is open from ages 5 to 18. So to be a fully enrolled 4-H member, then you are in grades 3 through 12. And so there are some requirements to be in 4-H, and one of them is that you have to still be in high school. So once you graduate and you've walked and you've gotten your diploma, then your 4-H year ends when that 4-H year is over, which is August 31st of every year. So it's really structured for 3rd grade through 12th grade. But as I said, we do have some activities, they're called Clover Kid activities for younger children too. 4-H is under the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension umbrella, which falls under the Texas A&M University system. So, we have AgriLife Extension is in all 254 counties in Texas. And so it makes this a really large program. And so we're proud to say that 4-H has over 550,000 youth enrolled every year. So very, very large program that, takes a lot of management, and it also takes a lot of volunteers, because as county agents, it would be near impossible for those 254 agents to be able to bring the programming to that many kids successfully. So that's why we rely very much on club managers to help us and other adult volunteers. So 4-H has also been around for a very long time, over 100 years. It was founded in 1908. So it is I like to say, a mature program. So, but we are also not grounded in the past. We are moving forward, and we make changes every year as necessary, as far as adding new programs and projects as the children's needs change and their interests also change. So let me ask you a question, and if you don't mind typing in the chat box. So I've already told you there's over 550,000 kids enrolled in 4-H. So how many clubs do you think we have in Texas? How many 4-H clubs? So type in your answers if you're brave enough, and it's okay if you're wrong, because you may or may not know this answer. Okay, well, those are good guesses, y'all, but there are actually over 2,000 chartered 4-H clubs in the state of Texas. So that is a lot of clubs that we have across the state. So now maybe that will help you to understand that, it takes volunteers to run these clubs. And so without you as a volunteer, as a club manager, it would be near impossible to meet those needs of all those kids in all those clubs. There's 3 primary types of 4-H clubs. There are community clubs, and those are typically clubs that are operated in your counties, and they're overseen by an adult, and they typically are organized with the county extension agent They usually meet after school hours, so maybe typically on a weekday night or maybe a Saturday. So those are what we call our traditional community clubs. They typically meet once a month. They may meet more as contests are coming near and other types of events such as that. But this is your traditional community club where kids from a particular county get together to work on a project or to complete a community service opportunity and their club business at the same time. Also, we have what are called project-based clubs. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you some of the projects we offer within Texas 4-H. But those are going to be clubs that focus on a particular area. Maybe there's a project that the kids are interested in, like shooting sports. And so all the members of that club would have that same interest and meet to practice maybe archery or shotgun, rifle, whatever their focus is within shooting sports. And so all their business would revolve around that one project. So another type of club we have within 4-H is called an in-school, or it could be an after-school. So these are similar models, and they function within a school program. And so we have both types within our district. Some that function within the school day, and the kids have one of maybe their class period or lunch period that they have their club meeting and get together. Now, we do have some clubs that also function as after-school programs. So maybe you have a school that's looking for a program for their kids to participate in that are staying after hours, then this would be a great opportunity for those kids also to be involved within 4-H. Okay, so here's the list of our projects that we have in 4-H. We have over 43 different projects. We have them organized under what we call the 5 pillars of 4-H. So they're based on agriculture and livestock, family community health, natural resources, leadership and citizenship, and then STEM, which is our science, technology, engineering, and math. So a lot of different areas to meet those kids' needs within the state of Texas. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that we have all these projects in every county. And so that's another reason we rely on volunteers to help us, because again, if we were to conduct 43 different projects within every county, that would be very challenging for one individual to do. So what we do is, if we have some kids that come forward and say, hey, I'm interested in maybe the horse project or something like that, then we can reach out and see, hey, maybe there's somebody in our community that is an expert in horses or willing to learn about them and lead that project for those kids. So that's how projects are determined. It's really based on the needs of the county and what the interests of the kids are within that county or that school. So, and then some things work well within schools and some it would be a little more challenging. So some projects that are wonderful that work very well within a school curriculum would be like our foods and nutrition project, our photography project, robotics, the natural resource programs. And then one of our ags that works really well is the rabbit project because it's small and doesn't take up a lot of space. So when you start getting into the larger animals like your swine, your horses, and your cattle, well, that's typically going to take place within a traditional community club or project club. I want you to think just for a second, and you can put your answer in your chat box. So why would a person want to attend a 4-H club meeting? That is why we take time out of our day to attend a meeting, a club meeting, and because normally we're getting together, I think like Matthew said, to be with people who have those same interests in organization or that particular meeting. Those were all great reasons that y'all gave as far as why people go to club meetings. And the primary one is to be with people that have the similar interests that we do. When you attend a club meeting, there are things that we look for within that. And the number one thing that research shows that people look for in attending a meeting is to learn something. So whether you're an adult or a youth, you are going to that meeting to learn something new. Or why would you give up your time, right? What would be a reason you would not attend a club meeting? Research also has shown that the number one reason that people do not want to attend a meeting is because it's boring. I mean, who wants to go to a meeting that is no fun, is all about business, and there isn't any type of activity that makes you want to be there? You don't learn anything. I think one of the number one things that frustrates me sometimes when I go to a meeting is they are way over their time period. How is a club meeting structured? So within a club, you have adult leadership and you have youth leadership. So the adults are your club manager, your assistant manager, any adult volunteers that are helping with that program, and then your county extension agent. But who leads the actual meeting? Is it the adults or the youth? Sometimes as adults, we can very easily take over and overstep our bounds as far as meetings go. Well, really, the youth should be leading the meetings. They should be planning the meeting, running the meeting. This gives them all the experience they need to be successful as adults to run meetings successfully. So we want to give them those opportunities and then also give them feedback after meetings as to ways that we could make it better. And so that's where the adults come into play. Obviously, we need adult supervision, and you play a very important role in helping with the supervision of those clubs and overseeing the management. But it's our youth, our club officers, our club members, committee members that are actually leading the meeting. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. To be a club manager or an assistant club manager, you need to be at least 18 years of age, and you enroll within 4-H online. You also submit a background check because we want everything to be on the up and up and safe for our kids. And so that is submitted through 4-H online as part of your volunteer application process. There's also an annual fee. It's $10 to be a volunteer, and that is also submitted at that time. And then after you have been approved to be a volunteer, you need to complete some specific trainings on 4-H. And that's going to be about adult orientation, just to give you an overview of the 4-H program, how you ensure a safe environment for the kids that you're going to be providing a club meeting or a project meeting for, and then also some club management training, and then financial management or cash management. You complete your trainings, and then within your county extension agent should be offering a club manager training that you can attend and find out how you can plug in and work within that county to bring that 4-H program. What are your duties as a club manager? So you are the primary link between the county agent's office, the agents, and the 4-H club. So you are the go-between. So the county agent may say, hey, we've got this event coming up for 4-H, or we've got a livestock show. And so you would take that information that is given to you from the county office or the agent, and you would provide that information to your club members. So you also complete a charter application. So every club in the state of Texas has to be chartered on an annual basis. And we'll talk more about that towards the end of this presentation and what that means. So the deadline to charter is July 15th. I guess that's when we start the chartering process, because our new 4-H year rolls out on September 1. So we start getting everything in place July 15th so that the club can kick off right away September 1 when the new 4-H year starts. Also, because Texas 4-H is a 501(c)(3) under the IRS, then there is what is called a 990N form that has to be completed every year by December 15th. And that is so we can get everything closed out by the end of the IRS year, which is December 31st. And it's a very simple procedure. It just asks you some questions like, is this club still in existence? You know, is this the correct EIN number, etc.? And it just takes a very few minutes to complete that questionnaire, and that gets electronically sent to the IRS, and then we've met our requirements for them. Another duty of a club manager is to share enrollment information to help recruit new members, to not only lead and help oversee those club meetings, but to help encourage new kids that want to come in to be part of the club, or to, you know, get the kids re-enrolled for the next year. I cannot stress enough how important it is to check out what we have available on the Texas 4-H website. And up here in red at the very top of my slide, the website is posted. It's texas4h.tamu.edu/management. And this is a screenshot of what that page looks like. So when you go down that tab on the website, there's going to be a wealth of information there for you on what the roles and responsibilities of a club manager are, how to strengthen your clubs, how to conduct club officer training for your youth. They're going to be leading the meetings, your cash management practices. And then one of my favorite things that's on this website is there's actually 36 sets of organized meeting topics. It gives you a month-by-month program suggestion, an inspiration, a recreation. So if you're struggling a little bit with coming up with topics, you can use these as guides and to give you some new ideas as far as conducting a successful and a fun club meeting. There's also officer installation resources. So if you want to have an installation ceremony to install those new youth officers, then there's a lot of fun ways you can do that. A lot of other information on there too. One other thing that is on there is marketing information. So there's some press releases, and also the 4-H logos are listed on there too that you can download to utilize for promoting 4-H within your counties or your school. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what a 4-H club meeting should include. So there's 4 parts to a club meeting. There's the inspiration, the program, the business, and the recreation. The fun factor comes in. So whatever our program topic is, maybe you have the game warden is your speaker, and he or she is going to talk about, you know, how to determine the points on a deer or something along those lines. And so that's where the fun factor comes in during the program and during the recreation that is incorporated within the club meeting. So therefore, when we have a club meeting, we should have the most time on those 2 areas. So somebody that can do math, add up those times and tell me how long a typical club meeting should last. But typically, a youth-aged child cannot, you know, sit for hour upon hour and listen to a program. So that's why we say the program should not be more than 20 minutes long. Your business, 15, and then your recreation, which is why a lot of kids come to 4-H meetings, is for the recreation aspect. But you make that about 20. So as far as structuring your club meeting, this is a good order to put them in. You start with your inspiration. That's going to be your club pledge, your 4-H motto. If you open your meetings in prayer. So all your inspiration takes place at the very beginning. Then it's very nice to go ahead and have your program, especially if you have a guest speaker coming in, because they don't necessarily need to sit through the business portion of your meeting. So if you go ahead and have your program up front, then that speaker can go about their business and you know, not have to sit through the business portion unless they want to or you have invited them to. And then you close it out with recreation. And the reason why you do your recreation at the end is because that is what is really enjoyable for the kids. And so you limit it to maybe about 20 minutes, maybe a little less, because what that does is that creates that I want to come back to next month's meeting because that was so much fun. They leave on a good positive note. I had fun doing that team building activity or whatever your recreation is that you have scheduled. So this is a great format for conducting your meetings. And again, if you are wrestling with an hour and keeping that on track, then I most definitely would have an agenda in place with specific times. And that will help your parliamentarian that you have within your club officers to be able to say, hey, it's time to wind up our business so we can move on to recreation or wherever you're at on your agenda. So agendas really help make a meeting successful. Let's talk about when we have to consider if we're going to have a face-to-face meeting or a virtual meeting. And so this year we have really run into virtual as a component of our 4-H meetings. So typically in the past, we've all run them face-to-face and nobody thought anything differently. And then wham, bam, we have COVID. Whether it's face-to-face or virtual, make sure you always have some sort of recreation. Maybe you have an icebreaker to get everybody, off that awkward, not wanting to talk or share. Use your chat boxes. You can also, within your chat boxes, you can raise your hands. Do things like that maybe are ways to engage your audience virtually. And then, of course, always have a program or, something to do with your project during the meeting time, too. Look at ways to do movement online. Maybe you throw an imaginary ball and have your youth answer questions. So do something maybe a little different. Ask some off-the-wall questions to get the kids to think. What would you like to do if you could go to the grocery store and buy one healthy food today? What would it be? You can also do a stretch. Like everybody, okay, hands to the ceiling, stretch, 10 seconds. Out to the side, we're going to stretch, put on some fun music and do some sort of stretch activity, which would be a good little recreation for the kids. Also, one of my favorite things on a virtual platform is to do a scavenger hunt. Maybe say, okay, we have 1 minute. I need everybody to go to their kitchen and bring back their favorite cup. And so then everybody would bring back their favorite cup and you could have a little discussion about why that cup is your favorite or why you like the color or the logo or, something along those lines. So those are some ways that you can make a virtual meeting more engaging and fun. Also within Zoom and also within Teams, there's an annotate feature and it can put hearts and stars and it just adds that to the background of the screen. So that's another fun way. So you could say, all right, so if you agree with me, use your annotate feature and give me a thumbs up. And so then people can give the thumbs up signal. But the most important thing about any type of 4-H meeting, whether it is face-to-face or virtual, is to make it worth their time. Because if it's not worth their time to come to the meeting, then they're not going to want to come back. Let's talk a little bit about putting the fun back in 4-H meetings. So if we're doing a face-to-face meeting, make sure you engage your club officers so that they can provide their perspective on programs that are of interest to them. Another way to bring the fun back into a club meeting is to use a particular theme. So on our next slide, just a second, we'll talk about some different themes that you can use. But when you have a theme, and if you've worked as a teacher, you probably are very familiar with this. So maybe it is Women's History Month. And so you bring that theme into your program, whatever your topic is, your lesson for the day. You bring it into any type of recreation you're doing with the kids. Maybe they write a paper about it if you're within school, things like that. So everything revolves around that theme. So within a 4-H club meeting, you can do the same thing. You can have your theme through your program, the recreation, even the refreshments. So if you go to the next slide, here's some specific themes that I've used in club meetings when I was an agent. So one of my favorite ones to use is a theme around diversity or different cultures, or ways to include others that maybe are a little different than us. And so this gives the kids a great lesson on accepting others and being aware of that, hey, just because I'm one way doesn't mean everybody else is the same way. And so one of the ways we did this in one of my clubs was through cultural themes. And what we did was we looked at the diversity of the kids, the ethnicity within the kids in our club, and we had Caucasian kids that had a lot of different backgrounds as far as ethnicities. We had a child that was from Korea, a family from Korea. We had several kids with a Hispanic background. And then we had several kids that were African American. And so what we did was we got all the kids, and we had them do some research on their backgrounds. Maybe a family came over from Scotland or Poland, to the United States, because we are all immigrants into the United States. Unless we are a Native American, we immigrated from another country at some point in our history. So we had the kids take our 10 club meetings that we were going to conduct over the year and conduct a meeting on their culture. And it was a great experience for the kids because a lot of them did not even know a lot about their history and the countries that their families or great grandparents came from. So they did a short program on, maybe it was an introduction of a particular food or a costume or language, or something along those lines. So one of my favorite, and the one that the kids really enjoyed a lot, was we had some kids that had immigrated from Mexico. Their families had come over many years ago. And so one of their traditional activities that they did within their family was the confetti eggs. And if you've ever made confetti eggs or had the opportunity to participate in a confetti egg recreation event, it's a lot of fun. So we told the kids up front, before the meeting, to bring a dozen eggs that they'd already, blown them out, so they were just the shells, and we decorated the eggs, and the kids did the program. So we had this one family that led the program, talked about why they participated and had this tradition within their family to make these confetti eggs. And so the history of a confetti egg is all tied around Easter and the celebration of the rebirth and the resurrection of Christ and so forth. So they talked about the confetti eggs. So everybody in the meeting, dyed their eggs. We stuffed them with the confetti. And then for our recreation, we went outside and threw the confetti eggs and had a lot of fun. So the kids really had an enjoyable time learning about that tradition, because maybe they had, purchased confetti eggs. They've never had made them, but they didn't know about the background, the tradition, and what the purpose was in making those confetti eggs. So it brought that cultural awareness to the entire club. And then it also, on the other side, made those kids that maybe were a smaller minority within the club to feel more included. And so that's a great way of themes that you can bring to your club meetings. Also, you could do your club meetings and focus on your 4-H projects. So you could take the 5 pillars and maybe divide those into 2 opportunities during the year, the 4-H year. So maybe you take, let's say agriculture. So you have kids that are maybe participating in the swine project, and you have kids participating in the beef project. And maybe you don't have any kids participating in the horse project, but this would be a good opportunity to see if there is an interest for kids to participate in a horse project. So maybe one month you have those kids that are doing the swine project to come and talk about, and maybe even bring their pig if it's still small, or some pictures of their pig, and talk about how they care for their pig, how they feed it, you know, the different aspects of raising a pig. And then they could also talk about the contests that they've gone to and how they show the pig and so forth. That would also to bring some interest into maybe those families that aren't involved in that project, but maybe are interested in becoming involved. And so they can see from a child's perspective what it's like to participate in that swine project. Also, if, like I said, if maybe you have an introduction to a new project, and I keep using horse, I don't know why I have horse on the brain, but maybe you don't have anybody that does anything with horses, but you have somebody in the community that could come and talk about how to care and raise horses, or ride a horse, or choose a saddle for a horse. And that could maybe spur that interest for that project to get started within your club. So revolving your themes around the 4-H projects is another good way to bring the fun back into your club meetings, and also get the youth involved in bringing those programs to the club meetings. Another way you could conduct your club meetings is along the theme of monthly holidays. So within the United States, we actually have 11 recognized federal holidays. Does anybody know which month we do not have any federal holidays? What month? There's one month, and it's happening right now, so that should give you a clue. It's the month we're in. Anybody want to chat, throw that out? What month are we in right now? Arvita, does anybody know what month this is? All right, so August. Thanks, Cassie. All right, so this is August. August is the only month that we do not have a federal or a national holiday within the United States. But I did some research, and August is also, this is a fun kind of wacky holiday, and you may not have even known about it, but in August we celebrate cats and dogs. So maybe you could use August to have a pet day, and everybody bring a picture of their cat or dog, and you could talk about pets, because pets are very important to our lives. All right, so you could also conduct your club meetings around holidays. So another way to bring some fun back right now, especially since we are involved with the pandemic, maybe you could have your programs feature different community service workers, frontline workers, and have a guest speaker come in each month. Maybe you could have the fire department, your police or sheriff's office, a nurse or doctor, a veterinarian, all these different types of careers that provide service to our communities. Those are good ways to not only introduce those individuals to our youth members, but to also maybe plant the seeds of, hey, this might be a career I want to explore, and you know, maybe pursue in college or a technical school and become one of these community service workers and give back to my community along those lines. So that's a really fun theme that we've had a lot of success with within the Shelby County Club. Also, we have along physical activity lines, there's several ways that you could have fun, and you could have the 4-H Road Show. And if you're not familiar with that, at our 4-H Center in Brownwood, they have what's called the Road Show. And all you have to do is contact the 4-H Center, and your point of contact there would be Carrie Snyder. And she will actually come to any club across the state of Texas, and she has a trailer full of fun activities for the kids. And these are going to be your big activities like your bounce houses, your blow-up slides, those big bouncing balls that you could actually get inside of and, you know, bounce the balls against each other. And, you know, a lot of things that may be limiting, you know, financially for us to purchase for a club to utilize, but it could be brought to your club meeting. And also she has a lot of team work engaging activities for the kids to do too. So a lot of fun ways that you can incorporate physical activity. Also, we have within AgriLife, we have the Walk Across Texas program, which is a virtual challenge to get people up and moving. And so every week, to see who can walk across Texas and cover 832 miles within an 8-week period. So you could also we have a blender bike. Most districts have those, and it's a bicycle that is stationary and it has a blender attached. So this would be a great opportunity to include your food and nutrition kids, to demonstrate maybe some healthy smoothies and take the blender bike challenge and ride the bike and make a smoothie, which is always a lot of fun for the kids. And then you probably are familiar with Jump Rope for Heart, but that is an organization that utilizes the kids jump rope, and they raise funds for heart disease research. So there's a lot of ways and different themes that you can utilize, and I'm sure you can think of some too, to bring some fun into your club meetings. What else do we plan? So we've talked about planning club meetings, and so we use our club officers to do that planning, but also each club should have some goals that are set aside as far as what are we going to accomplish as a club. And that could be, you know, what are we going to do during National 4-H Week? Are we going to interpret what our club has done to maybe the county commissioners or our school board? So all these parts go into our planning. You know, how are we going to bring new members into our club? Are we going to have some sort of recruitment activity? Maybe at a local festival. Maybe you have a livestock show, or we have here in Shelby County, we have a poultry festival. Maybe you could have a booth at one of those activities and let people know what 4-H is about. Recognize our club members. Are we going to have some sort of project recognition, an award ceremony? Maybe we're going to do a volunteer recognition event and have some special guests come. So those are things that need to be planned when you're looking at planning a club meeting for an entire year. And then lastly, fundraisers. So do we need to raise some funds? You know, there are clubs that don't raise any funds, and that's fine. They're all, you know, everybody takes care of their own supplies and so forth. And so you can run your club either way, whether you do fundraisers and have a bank account and you raise money to participate in a particular activity. Maybe you raise those funds to offset some contest fees, or to go to a particular event, take a field trip, those types of things. So fundraisers are allowed, and we'll talk more in depth about fundraisers in just a few minutes. So all these are components that need to be planned when you're thinking about an annual plan for your club. All right, on the next slide, we're going to talk about when we do the planning process. So typically, we start our year in September and it ends the next August. So a good opportunity, a good time to plan your club activities for the year would be in the summertime. So remember, we're utilizing our club officers to do that planning. And so most kids are out of school between June and August, the beginning of August. That time to get your officers together and do some officer training with them. Our officers are elected on an annual basis for a 1-year cycle. So most of the time, what we like to see, and you can do this differently, but officers are elected at the end of our year, or sometime in like May time period, May, June, and then they come to a training in the summer. So you would offer a club training for them to learn about what their new roles are if they're moving into a new position, and what the expectations of that role is as an officer. And then you would also have some leadership activities for them to do, maybe some team building, and then also plan what your year is going to look like. So, when is our first meeting going to be? When are we going to meet for our club meetings? Is it always going to be a set schedule? So maybe you set your schedule to be the first Tuesday of every month. That's when we're going to meet, and we're going to meet from 6 to 7 p.m. And we're going to meet at the county extension office. So we have that training that's going on, and not only are our officers trained, but the whole year is laid out. What are we going to do to celebrate National 4-H Week? What are we going to do as our fundraisers for the year? So if you line all that out before your new year starts, it makes it much easier. So another resource that's on the website, there are planning guides for you to plan an entire year, to divvy up the responsibilities between your officers so that each person knows what their responsibility is for each club meeting. So check out those.
Swain.
Yes.
We have a question.
Yes.
We have a question. Does Texas 4-H do state council or district officer training?
Yes. So if you are a district officer, we sure do. Every year we have leadership lab. This year we did do a virtual leadership lab, and typically during our leadership lab, we do a officer training. So if you're going to be a district officer, that's when you're going to receive that officer training. So this year, because we had a virtual leadership lab, we are going to have our officer training. I believe it is in September this year. Arvita is one of our district council advisors. And so we will have some officer training conducted in September. So yes, we do district officer training. Now the state also does officer training, and that is conducted in July. And so they meet at the 4-H Center and in Brownwood, and they have that training. So Matthew, he is one of our officers, and he's on this morning. And I know that he participated virtually in that officer training for Texas Council. So yes, we do trainings for both of those levels of officers too.
Thank you.
So the training is conducted, you've planned out your year, and then it makes it very easy to adapt that training throughout that entire year. And that helps alleviate maybe scrambling. Maybe you think, oh, it's Sunday today, and we have a club meeting on Monday. Oh, who's supposed to do this and who's supposed to do that? Well, if you've got a plan in place, you may need to remind your officers, what they have signed up and what their responsibility is, or what they're going to bring if there's supplies that they're bringing to the meeting. But, if you've got it all planned for the entire year, it makes it much smoother in conducting those meetings as you go. All right, so we go on to the next slide, and we can talk about, and this is a question for y'all. So say we've conducted a year's worth of meetings. How do we know that those meetings were successful? What tells us that we had a successful 4-H club year? So you can type those answers in your chat box, then we'll see what y'all consider a measure of success for a club meeting. Any ideas?
Okay, we're still waiting.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Is our club growing? Let me see.
So maybe you've added some new members. So that would be a measure of success.
Right.
Anything else? Anybody can think of?
Are students excited about attending and sharing with other friends?
Okay.
Learning something new. Also, the parents tell you how much the kids enjoyed it. There's active participation from those in attendance or good attendance by current members. And there's more enthusiasm.
Okay, great. Those are all correct answers. So those are ways that you can gauge whether you had a successful 4-H year. And the main one is participation. So if you have your members are participating, they're coming out regularly, they're bringing friends, they want to be involved, maybe there's new interest in new projects. Those are all definitely ways that you can gauge that you are having a successful year. So another way that you can gauge, you can actually use, we have what's called a 4-H scorecard. And this is another resource under the management tab on the 4-H website. And you can give your officers this scorecard. And what the scorecard does, it asks them particular questions about each meeting. And so what you can do is you can follow up at the end of your meeting with your officers and have them score their meeting. And this will help to give them some feedback that doesn't necessarily make it feel like criticism, but to give them positive feedback on ways to make that their next meeting more successful if maybe it wasn't a great meeting. If you go to the next slide, Arvita, I talk about some of those points. So after each meeting, what you can do is just spend about 5 minutes with your officers and talk about what went smoothly, where there can be some improvements, what we can do differently for our next meeting. And so that will help to give them some immediate feedback on their participation as an officer. So you have them complete that scorecard, and that will help them to realize, okay, or this was an outstanding meeting. Man, we all scored 100%. So, or maybe there's some areas we need to work on. What was our attendance? How did we engage our members? Did the officers just stand up there and do all the talking, or did they actually have some engagement that was going on? So those are some questions that can be addressed by using the 4-H club meeting scorecard with your officers. All right, next slide. Recruitment. So this is an area that I get a lot of questions on as far as how do we get new members involved, or how do we recruit new adult volunteers to help with different aspects of our club meeting. So some ways that you can do that is maybe you could have a countywide 4-H kickoff night or a drive. And this is something we did every year in Shelby County. So New Year would start September 1. So usually towards the end of August, we would have on a Sunday afternoon, we would invite the community, anybody that was interested in 4-H, we would send flyers home. We typically did this after the first week of school. So we would send flyers to our schools, and, they would send a flyer home with the kids in their backpacks or in their hand and invite them to come to our 4-H kickoff. And so at our 4-H kickoff, we would have a different booth for each project. So our project leader, adult project leader would be there. We'd have some kids at the booth that were involved in that project. And then we would try to make that booth as hands-on as possible. So if it was a food and nutrition booth, then, maybe they would build a smoothie, choose their ingredients, pick out some grains that they want to try, make a shake, something fun like that, so the kids can see that, what the food and nutrition project entails, and also, of course, enjoy a lovely snack at the same time. We would have like our goat project. The kids that were involved in the goat project, we would have a couple of them bring their goats and, show some of the tools that they use to care for their goat, or the feed and that type of thing. And so that way the kids can see hands-on and not just look at a picture, but actually, experience, touch that goat and see what it feels like, and inquire about what that project entails. And so the kids would give information to not only the parents, but the child that's there interested in that project, but then the adult leader would also provide some information on that particular project. So always a great way to recruit new members is through a kickoff or a recruitment drive. Another popular way to introduce 4-H is to maybe, if you have a good partnership with your local schools, when they have their open house or their meet the teacher night, ask, can I have a booth, a 4-H booth, and invite parents to come over to my booth and learn about 4-H and what 4-H is about. Particularly if you have a 4-H club that's a community club and it's not conducted within your school hours or after school program in conjunction with the school, that's what I'm trying to say, then, you can invite them to visit your traditional club meeting and be a part of that. Also, another great way is at a local community event or festival. So here in Shelby County, we have the Poultry Festival. And so at our Poultry Festival, we always have a 4-H booth and have some hands-on fun activities and invite people that aren't familiar with 4-H to come visit our booth and do a fun activity. Maybe it's make a plant head person. That's one of our fun activities. Or bring our blender bike and do a smoothie, ride the bike and make a smoothie and taste it kind of thing. So, get your name, get your club visible and out in the community, and that will help people to associate, this particular club with your community or your school. You can also submit articles for your newspaper. I know our local newspaper here in Center is always looking for interesting tidbits to print, and they're willing to do that at no charge. And so one of our clubs here has a great officer background, and we've got a child that is a reporter for the club, and every month she would submit an article and telling about what happened at the club meeting for that month, and then inviting guests to come, new people, new 4-H members, new youth, to come to the next 4-H meeting. You can also do a PSA on radio stations. A great time to do that is during National 4-H Week in October. Or maybe you have got a great fun event coming up. If you get the kids involved and not just having an adult to lead and do those newspaper articles and those PSAs, kids relate to kids much better than they relate necessarily with adults. So, a child inviting a child to come probably will get a better reception. You can use social media to invite new members, new people to come. One Day 4-H, as I said, it happens in October, so that's a great time to get out in the community, wear your club t-shirts, maybe complete a community service project. So people say, hey, that's a great club. How do I get involved with that? I know one thing we did here in Shelby County was we did not have any landscaping around our historic courthouse that is actually a museum. And so our 4-H clubs got together, worked with a landscaper, of course, got approval from commissioner's court, and had some plants donated, and we planted them all around the historical courthouse. And now we have beautiful roses and other plants that are growing around our courthouse. And everybody associates that landscaping with our Shelby County 4-H clubs. And lastly, an idea you can use is to partner up with Tractor Supply. If you've got a Tractor Supply in your area, they are a very large supporter of 4-H, and they have 2 times a year in April and in October that they do a fundraising drive for 4-H. And any funds that are raised at that local Tractor Supply go back to your local 4-H programs within those counties. So, maybe have a booth at Tractor Supply during April and October, so people would be more readily to donate $1 when they check out or something along those lines, or find out more about 4-H when they're shopping at their Tractor Supply store. So great ways that you can do some recruitment very easily within your community. Okay, on our next slide, we're going to look at fundraising. So this is another topic that comes up. Yes, you can do fundraising. So all fundraising that's done within a club is to support the local organization. So funds that are raised within, say, Shelby 4-H Club stays in Shelby 4-H. It does not get divvied up among the district or the state. It stays right there within your local club. We do have some restrictions, and we're going to talk about those in just a moment. But there's, we really don't have a lot of restrictions. We just want any fundraising that is conducted to uphold the 4-H image and the reputation. So we want to do fundraising that is youth appropriate and comes across in a very positive manner. And lastly, we don't want to do any type of fundraising that's illegal. So on our 4-H website, under that management tab, we have a whole cash best practices management booklet. So within there is a whole section on fundraising, what is considered legal, what is illegal. And one of the big questions we get every year is about conducting raffles. You probably see lots of raffles being conducted across the state with various organizations. And so raffles are considered gambling by the state of Texas. And so there are particular rules that have to be followed if you want to conduct a raffle. And the number one thing is you cannot give cash as a prize for a raffle within 4-H, because that's considered gambling, and gambling is illegal. So if you want to have a raffle, you can do a raffle. You just have to raffle off a particular prize, whether that be a quilt, a cake, a gun, whatever it is, but it has to be a tangible item that is raffled and not cash. So are there any questions on that? Because that is something that we usually have to address annually, is raffling for cash. Okay, I don't see anybody typing anything.
No questions thus far.
Okay, great. So let's go on to the next page. Okay, so let's talk about chartering a little bit. So every year, every one of our 4-H clubs are required to be chartered. And a charter is basically a permit that allows a 4-H club to use the name that it's a 4-H club, the logos that are associated with that, with 4-H. So without this charter, you don't have permission to use the logo or the word 4-H. Okay, so basically it's saying they're copyrighted. So to use those, we have to submit our paperwork every year. And so it allows that group to function with those rights and privileges that go along with being a 4-H member. Okay, so we charter our clubs every year, and the chartering process opens on July 15th and it closes the next year on February 1st. So there's a long period in there, but we try to get everybody chartered as quickly as possible in that July, August timeframe so that their club can be selected. When you go in to enroll to be in 4-H, it's going to ask you during the enrollment process what club that you want to participate in. So if the club has not been chartered, it is not listed in your particular county as an option to be a member of. So that's why we try to get everybody's club chartered, everybody get their paperwork submitted no later than August the 15th, so that when the new year starts on September 1, your kids in your community or your school can select their particular club to be a member of. All right, go on to the next slide, please. All right, so as a chartered club, that now puts you under the Texas 4-H Inc. umbrella. So that says, as a chartered club, you can use the 4-H name, you can use the emblem, the logo. Also, as a chartered club, we have general liability insurance that covers a meeting. So if you have an accident that happens during a club meeting or a project meeting, if your club is chartered, you are covered, your people are covered under the liability insurance. If you don't have them chartered, they're not covered. And so we want to make sure that everyone is protected. So having that chartered paperwork in place gives you the right to utilize that insurance. We also have accident and incident insurance for our active 4-H members and volunteers during any 4-H meeting, activity, or contest. Again, we want that coverage in place in the event there is an accident. So if you have a person that has not re-enrolled, they've not activated their 4-H membership, which 4-H membership is you have to re-enroll every year as a youth member and a volunteer to be considered active. If you go to club meetings and you're not an active enrolled member, then if there were to be an accident, then you are not covered at that meeting because you're not active. So that's why it's so important to go in and get re-enrolled every year during our enrollment period. So I don't think I have addressed that. So enrollment is open every year starting on September 1, and it's open through the entire year. So it doesn't ever close. It's just we try to get everybody enrolled as quickly as possible so that they are protected under our insurance. So also, there is an enrollment fee, a participation fee for each year. So for each youth member to be an active member, the fee is $25. And it starts, as I said, September 1st, and it runs through August 31st of the next year. So when we do our chartering, you can go on to the next slide. So our chartering, have a chartered club, you have to have 5 or more members, okay? So think about that when you're working on your charter. Do I have 5 kids? Do I have 2 or more managers? So you have to have a minimum of 2 adult leaders. So that's typically your club manager and your assistant manager. And you have 2 managers in place because life happens. And, you know, you may, if you're the club manager, maybe something comes up and you can't make the meeting. And it's best to have your assistant manager step in, conduct that, you know, oversee that meeting so that it stays consistent. One thing that also throws people off from attending meetings is inconsistency. So if you're always rescheduling or canceling meetings, then you're going to have inconsistent attendance also. So that's why if you've got an assistant manager, they can step right in, go ahead, oversee that meeting, and it will, just continue as if you were there. All right, so you also have to have a specific meeting location. That means a physical address that you're going to conduct your club meeting at. You have a set of elected youth officers. Each person that is a member of that club has selected a particular project from the project list that they're going to be involved with. And they can have multiple projects they're involved with, but they have to have a minimum of at least one. You have to have a name of your club. And then you have to have bylaws in place. Also, within that best practices document that's on the website, there are some standard bylaws that you can utilize. They are a template that you can modify. It does tell you what has to be in the bylaws in order for them to be chartered as a 4-H club. But that's a great way to set up your bylaws. And then you have an annual financial review. And so you have a review of your books every year if you have a bank account. Obviously, if you don't have a bank account, you don't have to have a financial review. But that takes place every year also. All right, go on to the next slide, please. All right, so our bylaws provide structure and give you a plan on how you're going to conduct your business. So your bylaws have to be reviewed every year in case you need to update them, and they're approved by your club membership, usually sometime in the summertime or in your first club meeting. That gets, your bylaws get approved for the next year. Maybe they don't need to be updated, but you have to review those with your officers and your membership. Okay, they also must have a dissolution clause. So this says that if this club were to be dissolved, what happens? What happens with that club membership? Do you have those club members roll over into another club? If you have funds, what happens with that money that you've raised within that bank account? Where does it go? So that has to be part of your bylaws. And again, in that template, it has a standard dissolution clause included that can be modified. Okay, your next slide. So let's talk about some financial management. So this is one area that always needs to be addressed every year as far as how we manage the club finances. And so unfortunately, if this is, one area that can get people in trouble, it has to do with finances, whether that's personal or whether you're managing finances for a club. And so first of all, we want to make sure that we have everybody's trust, whether it's the public, our county commissioners, the general public, because if not, you know how people will talk, and they talk in a heartbeat. And so we want to make sure that we are doing everything on the up and up, that we have established accounting practices in place. That doesn't mean you have to have a CPA that keeps your books or anything along those lines, but you have to have something established, whether you use a paper ledger, you use a computer software program like Quicken or QuickBooks or something like that, but some way that you are keeping track of the account that you are helping to oversee for that 4-H club. Each county extension office conducts a cash management training every year for their new volunteers that are coming in, and as a refresher for our current members, our current club managers. And so that way you can get your questions answered specifically about the books that you're managing for that 4-H club. And so those that are handling any funds need to make sure they're doing everything in an open, responsible, and a trustworthy manner. Okay, next slide.
Not sure what's going on.
It get timed out like mine did.
Okay, it gets stuck. There you go.
There it goes. Okay, so as I said, you can have a bank account for your club, and a lot of clubs do have bank accounts. So when establishing a bank account, there's a few things you need to keep in mind. So your club name needs to be on your bank account. So you cannot use the name extension or Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. That should not be listed on your bank account, because if it is, then that means that those funds are the property of the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Agency. And I don't think anybody wants to raise funds and give them to the agency. You want to keep those local. So the best policy is to utilize the name of your club, maybe the Shelby 4-H Club, the Center 4-H Club, the Happy Hearts Quilting Club, whatever it is, but it needs to match up with your EIN number that you're going to apply for with the IRS. So that all matches your bank account, your club name, and your EIN number all have the same names associated. That way it doesn't create any confusion, because you'd be surprised. There are a lot of counties that have many, many clubs within them, and it can be challenging to keep everything straight. So think about that when y'all are establishing those club names too. Another suggestion is to not include the word county in your club name, because if you have the word county, that insinuates that fund or that bank account is owned by your county government. So I would not have Shelby County 4-H Fund, because that can be misconstrued that is overseen by Shelby County government. So it's okay to have like Shelby 4-H Fund, and a lot of clubs do use the name of their county in there. They just don't have the word county included. So those are things to think about. And again, when you're setting up your club, your bank account, the bank is going to ask for your EIN number, and you apply for that through the IRS, and that information again is on the resource page of the 4-H website on how to apply for an EIN number with the IRS. Okay, next slide. All right, so on this specific bank account, so when you have a bank account, you must have a minimum of 2 signatures on your checking account. So that is for your protection and just to ensure everything is on the up and up. So we always require 2 signatures. Also, when you have these 2 signatures, it cannot be 2 people within the same family. So if you're the club manager and maybe your wife is the assistant manager, and you cannot have it from the 2 people, 2 signatures from the same family. That's what I'm trying to say. So you want to have 2 different families involved. So maybe you have your club manager and then a treasurer from your the adult treasurer from the club to be the signature, but they're not in the same family. All right, so if you have any changes on your account, maybe you have a club manager that moves and you've got to change that, then make sure that the bank is notified and you put everything in writing. And also keep your county extension agent in the loop on that too. They need to know when changes are made. So when those financial audits are done at the end of the year, they know, who is legally responsible for that bank account. Also, just to keep everything clear and accounting purposes, to make those easier, each club or 4-H group should only have 1 bank account within their name. Instead of trying to have multiple bank accounts, if you have 1 and maybe you just have sub-accounts within that 1 bank account, and that just keeps everything much easier to maintain from a financial aspect. All right, the next page. All right, so when you receive funds, so say you have a fundraiser, you need to, if you take cash, to record those cash receipts immediately, deposit that right into your bank account within 3 days. We like to see all checks and cash be submitted to the bank within a 3-day period. That just helps so things don't get forgotten. To help people with their own personal financial management, to know that, hey, my check has cleared the bank and so forth. So 3 days. Make sure you keep a list of all your bank deposits, and maybe you get the, from the bank, and that is totally fine. It doesn't have to be a handwritten list, but you need to have a list of all your deposits so that when your financial audit is done at the end of the year, it's very easy to see the money that has come in and gone out of that account. If you want to use a safe, you can, but you need to have more than one person. I would suggest somebody from your extension office or your assistant manager also have access to that safe. Okay, next slide. All right, so when you're receiving funds, the person who collects funds should not be the person who writes checks and makes those deposits. So just to keep everything in the clear, if you're collecting the funds, you're not making the deposit. Somebody else is making that deposit. So you have more than one set of eyes on that cash or those checks. Also, when you're collecting cash, always have 2 people count it in the presence of each other. That way you get the same amount, both people do, and then it can be deposited by another person. So then that other person counts it also. So multiple people are seeing the same amount of transactions with those finances. Keep detailed records. When you have receipts, make sure you keep those in a secure location. You must have a receipt. So if you have any type of reimbursement, it must have a cash register receipt attached to it. Okay, the next slide, please. So if maybe you need some funds out of the account to pay a bill, to purchase an item for the club, you need to make sure all your supporting documents are date stamped. You've got a receipt that's got a date on it, and that you have identified what check number went with that receipt if you wrote a check for it, so that everything is very easy to understand when your books are audited at the end of the year. Reimbursement claims, so if you have a reimbursement you need to be reimbursed for out of that account, you must have a cash register tape that goes along with that reimbursement. And on that tape, if it's not easy to understand what the item was that you purchased, then you can make a note on there and just say, hey, purchased refreshments for the club meeting on October the 3rd, 2020. And when that purchase was made. All right, next slide. Okay, so monthly reconciliation. So you need to reconcile that 4-H account every single month and make any notes on the reconciliation. The bank accounts come to the county extension office. We do review those bank accounts, and then they are given to the person that is in charge of overseeing that bank account for the club. So we do take the time to go ahead and look at those, and then if we have questions as a county extension agent, we ask those questions. And don't take it personal. We're just trying to have a better understanding, because as a county agent, we sign off on these financial reviews. And so we want to make sure that everything is accounted for and the funds went and stayed locally, and items that were purchased were utilized for the club members. All right, next page. All right, this is a question that comes up all the time about, do I have to pay sales tax if I'm purchasing something for club use and using a 4-H club account? Do I have to pay Texas sales tax? Yes, you do. So 4-H is not exempt from paying sales tax. So you may apply to be exempt from state sales tax, but every club has to do their own application with the state of Texas, okay? So you cannot utilize your county government sales tax exemption number, another club's. You need to apply for your own. So most clubs do, because Texas 4-H Inc., you need to go the other way, Arvita, you're going back to the beginning. Texas 4-H Inc. is tax exempt, but you have to have your own club, has to have its own tax exempt number. So also on the resource page of the 4-H website, there is a document that tells you how your club can apply for sales tax exemption. So I would encourage you to do that. That will save your club some money, okay? And work with your county agent. They can help you with that process and getting that tax exemption in place for your club. Okay, next slide. We are almost done. Okay, so now we have COVID-19 in the play, and we have some social distancing guidelines. If you go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about those just a little bit. So how do we move forward? So we're starting our brand new 4-H year, and we're still dealing with the pandemic. We were hoping this would all be put to bed and to rest and we could just go on, but unfortunately it's not. So I encourage you as a club manager, assistant manager, stay in contact with your county extension agent. They have been notified when guidelines change for the agency as far as conducting meetings, how to conduct those, and how to do that in a safe way. So they will be sending you that information, and we have protocols that we are required to follow. And we have the same expectations for our clubs to follow those same guidelines. So you may hear, and this is a question that's come up quite a bit over the last few months. Well, the governor has said, that we can be at 50%, or the governor has mandated, this. Well, yes, we are an educational entity, just like a school is. We are not a business. So most of the mandates that have been released apply to businesses, and not all government mandates apply to 4-H clubs. So you may hear that, hey, we can be at 75% capacity. Well, that may be for a business, but not necessarily a government entity. So follow what your county agent is providing you for those social guidelines. If you haven't received that information, please reach out to them. They have screening forms that will need to be utilized. We have specific social distance guidelines, the 6 foot apart. We do require face mask at any face-to-face meeting. Hand sanitizers are required also. So, we take into account safety. That is our #1 priority. We want our kids to meet. We want our kids to be able to go to a club meeting, but we also have to ensure safety at the same time. All right, go to the next slide, please. All right, so we do have a preparedness plan, and this preparedness plan was created by, it was put together by our state office, and then it was put in this beautiful format by the Grayson County agents. And so I will share this with you. I'll email it to you. And it has all the protocols that we have currently in place right now. And it will outline what you need to do before you have a face-to-face meeting, during a face-to-face meeting, and after a meeting. So all the current protocols are in place, and as they're updated, we will send these out to you. So this is a great little handout for you to utilize to make sure that you are following those social distance guidelines that have been established for AgriLife, particularly 4-H club meetings. Okay, next slide, please. All right, here's just a couple of tips to wrap up this presentation on being successful as a 4-H club manager. So the most important thing is to maintain good communication, whether that's with your members, your other adult leaders, parents within the club. Make sure you're communicating, whether that is face-to-face, phone calls, maybe you're using social distance, I'm sorry, I got that on my mind. Social media, a Facebook page, whatever your communication tool is, make sure that it is good and active. Maintain relationships with your families. Nobody likes going to a new situation and not being welcomed, not being included. So make sure that new people that come into your club meetings feel welcomed and they want to come back, and you establish and maintain those relationships with your current members that you have. You know, practice those 4 steps to having a successful meeting. You need to have an inspiration, a program, do your business, and then have a fun recreation. And keep it under 1 hour. That will want people to come back to a meeting in the future. Make sure and let your club and community drive your programs and your projects and the goals of the club. So if it's interesting to the kids in your community or your club, then they will want to participate. And lastly, make it fun. Nobody wants to go to a boring, long meeting. They want to go where they're going to have fun and feel included. All right, next slide. So, from the District 5 office, I want to thank you for helping the youth in our county to grow into future leaders and to making the best better. So we truly appreciate your willingness to be a 4-H volunteer and to help our kids to be those great leaders and models for the future, to be future leaders within our counties. All right, I think I have one more slide, and it's my contact information. Surely we're going to get our last slide up here. Last slide, Arvita. Last slide.
I'm trying.
I can't believe it froze up on the last slide.
I keep hitting next. I keep hitting. Let me see what else I can hit. It's not letting me. Oh, goodness.
Oh, gosh.
I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. Hey, you got further in the program than I did.
Oh, there
we go. Okay, so some ways that I communicate with our 4-H members and volunteers in the district. We have a Facebook page. It's District 5 Texas 4-H. So if you search for that, you can definitely follow the Facebook page, join the Facebook page, and I post things every week on the Facebook page about upcoming events, things that are happening in the different counties, across the state. One thing, just for an example, I just posted this week, which I'm very excited about, is that Texas 4-H has a new partner, and it's Office Depot, Office Max. They have partnered with 4-H. So if you are a 4-H member, you get a discount if you purchase at those stores. So that's really nice. So things like that get posted on our 4-H page all the time. Also, my email address is listed here. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions. I try to be very prompt and answer my emails in the same day that I receive them. You can also call me. This is my district office phone number. Right now, I'm not in the district office a lot because of social distancing, but you can leave a message. My secretary is there on alternating days, but I do have an answering machine, and we'll get your message and we'll call you right back. And lastly, the most important resource is our website. And this is the same link I showed you earlier, the Texas 4-H website and the management resources. So please use that. It has a wealth of information for you to be successful as a club manager.